Welcome to April's Tech of the Month. This month we've got some brand new Italian rubber, some carbon infused sealant, and we're going to be looking at the dropper post and other modifications that brought Matej Mohoric so much success at Milan San-Remo. And as always, we have the bike of the month, which this month is the Specialized Allez Sprint. So first up, as promised, we've got that brand new Italian rubber. Simon, what can you tell me about it?
Okay, so the first few weeks of spring might seem like a strange time to bring out some puncture-resistant, grippy, hard-wearing rubber, but the Pirelli P0 Race 4S is a four-season tyre, and spring and summer are part of the four seasons, aren't they? The new P0 Race 4S is taking over from the P0 Velo 4S, and the difference is that it's using Pirelli's Smart Evo compound, which they're using on the rest of the new range of P0 tyres. And that's what that's meant to do, is to give a racing feeling. So you've got a four-season tyre with the grippiness, the puncture resistance, but you've got a faster feel.
So tell me about the widths.
Okay, well, with internal rim widths getting wider, Pirelli's updated the shape of the casing so that it fits better over an internal rim width. It has a shorter and wider contact patch, which it says is going to improve smoothness, cornering, as well as puncture protection. At the moment, it's only the 26 and 28mm, and in clincher, not tubeless. Tubeless are on the way, they say later this year, but for now, it's just those two widths. So the other interesting thing about these new Pirelli tyres is that they're 100% made in Italy, and these are actually the first tyres that Pirelli have made in Italy since they came back to cycling in 2017.
Wow.
They just finished renovating their new plant, which is just 10 kilometres outside Milan, where the main factory is. And those are the first tyres that have been made there. So first 100% made in Italy Pirelli bike tyres.
Wow, that's quite a step for the brand, actually.
Yeah.
So are they bringing all their tyres in-house, or are they still working with Hutchinson?
Just this one at the moment. And actually, yeah, Hutchinson, it's interesting because obviously some capacity has been freed up at Hutchinson, and now they've got their new Tundra gravel tyre, which is 100% made in France at the Hutchinson factory. So it's kind of a game of musical tyre factories.
Sure. Well, I guess with this move from Pirelli, there's a very good chance that actually Pirelli are going to start to bring more production in-house, and then that will allow them to, experiment more with their compounds and technologies.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously Hutchinson are rivals, so up until this point, Hutchinson have obviously known all of Pirelli's secrets. Compounds are always secret, as we know. Now this new tyre which is being made in Italy, gives Pirelli a chance to experiment with compounds and to develop secret technology that Hutchinson won't have access to.
Absolutely. And I guess for Hutchinson as well, this is going to be great for them, because now with their extra capacity, they can also have everything in-house in their primary factory rather than having to ship production elsewhere around the world.
Yeah, so that really suggests that we're going to see more Hutchinson tyres, more Hutchinson gravel tyres perhaps, that are 100% made in France.
So I guess once those tubeless tyres are ready, there is some very fancy tubeless sealant that you might want to put in them. Silca have released a brand new sealant which has carbon fibre in the sealant itself, which is pretty revolutionary. Now, it's a foaming latex formula, and 5% of that formula includes carbon fibre with sizes differing from 6, 9 and 12mm.
So that's actually the lengths of the fibres that are inside the foaming latex, right?
That's it, exactly that. And now those fibres have been recaptured from old bikes, old wheels, car parts, aeroplane parts. So they're recycling carbon fibre, which is quite nice.
That is a really nice thing. Yeah,
obviously, there's not often times when you can actually find a use for broken carbon fibre, so this is a really nice way in which you can repurpose it. And obviously the benefits of carbon fibre mean that it's a lot stiffer than fiberglass, and where you've got much bigger chunks, in theory, and what Silca say, is that you can then seal that at a higher pressure. Now, for roadies who have struggled with tubeless sealant in the past, this could be answer to their dreams, because if you can run it at a higher pressure and seal holes of up to 6mm, which is what Silca are claiming, then this could be an absolute game changer compared to the other sealants that are out there. So Silca say that their unique foaming latex formula allows for the super lightweight carbon fibres to be really evenly dispersed around the rim. So hopefully that should help with coverage. Now, they also say that their carbon fibres are 400% stiffer than glass fibres.
Wow. Are they more comfortable too?
Maybe they're going to build in some compliance in there. Maybe they'll try and make it more aero, but it's a bit
lighter.
Probably lighter as well. You know what? We should probably weigh them. I think because it only makes up 5% of the formula, I'd be amazed if there's a difference in weight. But it's just incredible. We're now talking about stiffness of sealants, which is a bit ridiculous. But there we have it. But I think this is a really nice offering from Silca. But amazingly from Silca, it doesn't come with that Silca price tag, because this is actually coming in cheaper than Stan's race sealant. So that is very impressive from them. But yeah, like Silca say, you should be able to seal holes of up to 6mm. But in the future, I think we're going to be putting this one to the test and see how good it really is.
We've got to, haven't we?
Stack it up against the other sealants.
Yeah. Now, what do Snoop Dogg, Sebastian Vettel, and Arnold Schwarzenegger have in common? Okay, well, since this is Cycling Weekly, you've probably guessed they all ride bikes. Okay, but the bikes themselves couldn't be any more different.
So what's Snoop Dogg riding?
Well, Snoop Dogg is riding a custom e-bike from East Van Chop Cycles, which is a custom e-bike manufacturer in Vancouver. And it's like a sort of low-rider motorcycle, and it's actually in one of his videos, One Blood, One Cuz.
Brilliant. And what about Arnold then? What's he got? Because is he also on an e-bike?
He is on an e-bike as well. Now, his is pretty interesting, actually. I mean, not to say that Snoop's isn't interesting, but Arnie's actually comes from a former British motorcycle brand called Matchless. Now, Matchless mostly make clothes and accessories, but they do a little sideline in e-bikes. And this is like it's like a fat bike, really. That's probably the best way to describe it. It's quite a cool looking thing, actually. And but even funnier, he says he's been out riding with Greta Thunberg around Santa Monica. Can you imagine that?
Brilliant. That's an incredible image to have in my mind, actually. That's hilarious.
And then he said that he was really pumped to introduce his daughter to Greta.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
that's quite nice, actually.
That's a lovely story, isn't it?
That is great. Yeah. What about Sebastian Vettel?
Okay,
obviously, someone who probably needs to cycle for their job. And is a professional athlete. What's he on?
Yeah, okay, so his isn't, obviously he uses his own legs to power his, he doesn't need an e-bike. But he rides a J. Laverack, which is a British brand, titanium. It's not a custom frame, it has sort of like little bespoke sort of touches to the build, but it's actually pretty standard. It has brand new Dura-Race on it. I don't know how he managed to get that, but he obviously pulled a few strings, as you can if you're in that sort of position.
Yeah.
But it's a lovely looking bike. But yeah, apart from that, it's standard.
Fair enough. Yeah. So I actually noticed someone else who rides a bike who is of a celebrity status, and that was Orlando Bloom. And I saw that he's got an incredibly nice Fesca with, I think he's got full Campag Super Record on there. Looks really, really nice. Wow. And then another person who might be slightly unexpected in the cycling world, Conor McGregor. He's got a pretty chunky looking 51, but again, looks really, really nice.
It would need to be chunky as well, wouldn't
it? Would. I mean, yeah, I'm sure he throws a fair bit of aggression out on that bike, but it is really interesting to see what these people go for, actually, because they aren't the bikes you'd maybe necessarily see all the time, and there's some very interesting builds out there.
Yeah, now 51 is Irish, isn't it? So obviously there's a kind of an Irish thing going on.
He's a very patriotic man.
Yes,
out of the ones we've just mentioned, though, which one's your favourite?
That's a difficult one. I quite like the Matchless e-bike, Arnie's Matchless, and my father actually had a Matchless motorcycle back in the 1950s. Yeah, seriously. So I'm pleased to see the name come back again, actually, even though it's not actually motorcycles. But I think it's nice that they keep sort of the two-wheeled thing going on, really.
That is really, really good, actually. I think for
What about you?
Yeah, for me, I think it's Orlando Bloom's Fesca. I think one spec on it, gorgeous, and also just the paintwork on it, super, super nice. We flashed some images up, so let us know who your favourite is. Or if there's other celebrities out there that have got some nice bikes, let us know your favourites down in the comments. As the tech team, we'd be slightly remiss not to mention the modifications that were made to Matej Mohoric's bike for when he won Milan San-Remo. Now, there was the dropper post, but there was also some other little secret upgrades, like his brake rotors and also the bearings he was using. But we'll start off on that dropper post. It was really interesting. So he had a 60mm drop on there, which kind of confused us because we know that the Fox dropper that he used is only available in a 50 and a 70. So we're not entirely sure how he managed to get that 60mm drop and find that middle ground. But I remember his mechanic saying that it was essentially the perfect middle ground. But how they achieved it, really not too sure.
I don't get that.
But it's quite interesting. But this is definitely opening up that bigger question of, well, okay, are we going to see more dropper posts in the field? But we've got those complications of proprietary seat posts and the fact that really they need to be within that 27.2 platform.
Yeah, which really means that an aero bike is never going to have a dropper post. But really, do you need a dropper post on an aero bike?
Well, that's it. If you're going to be using an aero bike on a flat stage, arguably you're not really going to be needing it. But say, for example, on climbing stages, obviously what goes up must come down, and climbing bikes are going to be a bit more, it's going to be easier to incorporate back in a 27.2 post. So I think that could be a change that we see, given the fact that, you know, manufacturers are going back to a threaded BB. I don't think it's too far out of the question to bring it back to a 27.2 post. Onto those other mods though, which helped him, you know, make that incredible attack on the descent on the Poggio, was that he managed to incorporate a 180mm rotor onto the front. Now, usually the Sculptura that he was riding wouldn't allow for that, but they managed to make and find some adapters which would enable him to have that big rotor. And they also fitted a 160mm rotor to the rear, which, so essentially it meant that he could brake a lot later and kind of attack a lot more rigorously.
And there was something about the hubs as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, so the bearings that were used, he said that they're secret bearings, but something that may be offered in the future. I think they've taken inspiration, or they've incorporated technology from the maglev trains that are in Japan, which were originally made in the UK, or designed in the UK, but it's how these bearings are constructed, and there's something around how it's kind of put into the hub as well, which means that there's virtually no friction. Wow. So he really went hard on making sure that he was as efficient as possible on that descent. But yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on droppers going forwards in the road world, you know, outside of mountain bikes?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to really ask ourselves, you know, how much advantage did it actually give him? And he's a pretty good descender, as we know. You know, he's one of the sort of the original super tuckers. Now that the super tuck's gone, obviously people are looking for something else, some other way to help them get more stable, lower their centre of gravity, get the saddle out the way. But really, if you look at, you know, that 60mm drop that he says he had, it's not really very much, 60mm, is it?
There's potentially more of a gain to be had if you could go lower, especially kind of from an aerodynamics and control point of view.
To replicate more the super tuck kind of
yeah, exactly. But there's also the potential that he didn't want to go too far down because he might have also wanted to be pedaling as well. So, I mean, for him, it was potentially about striking that happy middle ground and working out what worked well for him.
But he's a pretty good descender anyway. I mean, he's a really good descender. So do we think he would have won anyway without the dropper post?
Oh, it's a really good question to ask, actually. And I think with the other modifications he'd made, he was clearly very confident on that descent. And I reckon he probably still would have won. But as just from a mentality point of view, knowing you've got those modifications in place can really help, especially when you need to really commit to a descent.
Plus, he'd been showing it off at the start, hadn't he? Here's my dropper post.
Exactly.
You know, here's my secret weapon, not so secret.
Exactly.
So you've got to perform, haven't you?
Exactly. In some ways, and that might have made him feel accountable to the modifications, and you know, the modifications themselves might have just been helping him feel like he's got an edge over his rivals, which in the heat of the race can really help.
Yeah, right, okay. This month's Bike of the Month is the brand new Specialized Allez Sprint, which Specialized is claiming is the fastest alloy bike in the world and the first alloy superbike. Now, Sam, you went to Specialized in Dorking, didn't you, to have a look at it?
I did, yeah, and they showed me around, and they showed me one of the frame set colorways, and they also had the full build, so the Specialized Allez Sprint Comp, which comes in two colorways. There was a black version and then kind of a slightly controversial Bianchi Celeste color, and that was with a full 105 build with some DT Swiss wheels.
So what's so special about the new Specialized Allez Sprint?
Well, they say, in terms of compared to the previous one, it's a completely different geometry because it now matches that of the Tarmac SL7. And they are also claiming that it's now 41 seconds faster than the previous Sprint. I think actually testing that, you're going to need a wind tunnel. And over 40 kilometers, that's going to be 1 second a kilometer. Obviously, it is still quite a large jump, but it's going to be quite hard to feel out on the road, potentially.
The construction is completely different, isn't it?
It's not completely different, but they have improved the construction, and what they've done is they've removed one of the weld points down towards the bottom bracket. So on that down tube, that is a hydroformed piece of aluminium from a single piece of aluminium, and that's allowed them to incorporate the bottom bracket shell into the down tube. And obviously, as soon as you lose a join, it becomes a whole lot stiffer. Now, the seat post is also hydroformed, But the big contentious issue, and what everyone's kind of talking about, are these welds at the head tube. And they've moved them back to increase stiffness and ride feel in that head tube. But it's also meant you've ended up with these two fat welds, kind of just at the top of the down tube and the top tube. And they are just really big.
Whereas before the welds were down towards the bottom bracket, just above, weren't they, on the down tube?
Yeah.
And on the seat tube.
That's it, yeah. So at the bottom bracket, you had all the usual welds for the seat tube and the chain stays, but on that down tube, that's where they've lost it at the bottom bracket. Obviously, you've still got it at the other end as you'd need it, but they have lost one of them. And I mean, because they've done that, it does look really good, because, you know, dropping welds is always going to be a good thing.
But they're in a more visible place up at the front of the bike,
yeah,
aren't they?
Yeah, and I mean, even on the previous Allez Sprint, they weren't good looking welds, they were still really obvious. But they seem to be even more obvious on this bike, which is frustrating, because they don't look great. I think it's going to tear a lot of people. I think a lot of people are going to look at it and see it as a bike which enables them to get that kind of SL7 position and performance, but for a much lower price. But then others are going to just see, other people are just going to see those welds. And I think that's really going to put a lot of people off.
Because it's still actually, I mean, it's not really all that cheap, is it?
No, that's it. So, I mean, the frame set itself is £1,600 or £1,599. And the full build that we saw there is £2,600. So it's a lot of money. But I think you also have to remember that they are still making the normal Allez. So it's not like this is their entry-level bike. They're still making that original range. This kind of sits somewhere in the middle. It's going to be for someone who wants to take their cycling seriously and race, but not have to commit to spending, you know, £6,000, £7,000, £8,000 plus for a tarmac. In the past, they've made the S-Works Allez, and the S-Works Allez had incredibly smooth welds, and you could barely even see them through the paint. It does make me wonder, because this bike sits in the middle and it's not their entry level, why could they not go to the extent of what they did for the S-Works Allez and have those incredibly smooth welds again? Because if they had, it seems like this bike would then just be a slam dunk. Everyone would love it. Essentially, people would just see it as the budget SL7, and I think they'd sell endless amounts of them, rather than having this kind of little speed bump in the road of these welds.
And obviously no rim brake version.
No rim brake version, and you can't run mechanical discs, not that I can think of anyone who would want to. So it is just a hydraulic disc only bike. And I get the impression that they won't be offering a rim brake version at all. Same with the track frame set. Obviously we saw the previous Allez Sprint offered with track dropouts. I got the impression that's not going to be happening, but they did say, you know, who knows what can happen in the future, and knowing Specialized, they could go back and change their mind. So if you want to find out a little bit more information about that Specialized Allez Sprint, we've got an article on it and also a video which is on the YouTube channel. Do let us know your thoughts about those welds though. I know a lot of you are very polarized, but I'd love to hear if actually potentially you might like to build up a frame set. That's all from us though. If you enjoyed the video, drop it a like, subscribe to the channel for more content, and we'll see you again very soon.